So good morning first, and thank you very much for having invited me. I was invited to talk about electricity, but in reality, what we're going to talk is development. And this is probably the number one idea we have to understand. When we speak about electricity, we are speaking about development. And for this, we have a big challenge ahead of us. We cannot discuss, and this is not the idea today, if population will grow, multiply by 1.3, 1.4, 1.2, or the global GDP. But the only thing we know is we're going to double the energy demand. And the only thing I know, as a former president of Alstom Power, we have never been able to grow more than 3% a year on the long term. So we talk very lightly about doubling, but that's a very, very, very big challenge. On top of that, you have to remember that already today, 2.3 billion of people have no access to modern energy. And we have been doing that relying on fossil fuel since the beginning of modern age. And we have now understood that this cannot continue because we are reaching the limit of emission in the atmosphere. And again, a very important idea, coal, oil, and gas are not the enemy. The enemy is CO2 in the atmosphere. So in business, you learn not to go to the wrong enemy. We have to limit emission. We cannot summarize this by limiting or stopping utilization of fossil fuel, because on the medium term, this is absolutely difficult to reach. We have been tackling this issue for years now. I have put here all the cities where we are gathering with the United Nations and gathering to try to find a solution. I have put the green on where we have a small result and the red where no result, and you see that it's not that obvious. But something happened in 2015, last year, very happily to see that it happened in Paris. And in Paris, I think we had an historical agreement. Historical because 196 countries have decided to seriously tackle the limit of warming to 2 degrees C maximum, and if possible, 1.5. We think that only the agreement happened in Paris, but that's a wrong perception. In Paris, a lot of things happen. An agreement, and I will come back to this, but also national contribution, climate finance, and agenda of solution by business. And this all happened during that week, and we have to remember this. The agreement, I will not come into detail on this. This is not the idea of this speech. But what is important for business is we have a goal, 2 degrees, 1.5, something that we have not yet perceived how important it is. Zero net emission on the second half of the century. This is a complete transformation of the business, including what the speech this morning was referring to this. This is something we have never done, and this is something we don't imagine yet how it will be. And what is important is that the intended national contribution, that all this objective that the countries have sent free and bottom-up approach, we are not yet at the 2 degree. We are still at 2.7 or 2 degree, or 3 degree, but as a business leader, I am optimistic, and what I have seen is that in 1 year, we came from 6 degrees to 2.7, just asking to the people their free contribution. We now have to go to below 2 degrees, and this will be quite difficult and quite a challenge, because if you roughly put the countries on the map, between in the red, the ones that are way out of target, in yellow, the ones that are still out target but can't do it, and in green, the ones that are really on target, you see that we have still a lot of effort to make. But, and this is the big but, in Paris, something different happened. The difference is that we, civil society, were on the ground. We were there. For the first time, governments called the civil society, not only the NGOs that normally are there, with a lot of noisy manifestation, but the business. The business was there. We say, we are not yet at the table, but we are under the tent. We were listened, they asked our opinion, They ask what we need to go to the solution, and we are loudly now standing up and asking for direction. And this is why I am optimistic now from Paris, because we have this big change. Business is there. And business has done a lot of announcements. And the difference with the announcements previously is that this announcement, we are committed and we will follow them. One of them, International Solar Alliances, where India had a big role, and a lot of countries are now following, but we have plenty of them. I could spend the whole morning telling you how many businesses were involved. So what I say now is stabilizing emission with solution available today is absolutely possible. And this is probably in Paris where we have taken that very clearly in our conscience. So can we do it? That's the question. And I will now, in a few minutes, present to you the case of electricity. 3 years ago, we decided to launch this global electricity initiative in World Energy Council because I wanted to listen to the CEO of the utilities. I had a lot of voice coming from all over the world, and I wanted to listen to the guys that are generating electricity. So I gathered a board, and most of these people are very important people in each of the regions of the world. You see that we have India, obviously, but you have plenty of regions that have been represented. And we asked two companies, CEOs, that represent more than 80% of the electricity generated in the world, a few questions. And I will show now and share with you their conclusions. First of all, they say we're going to continue to use fossil fuel. This is important to understand. So in business, you learn that if you want to solve a problem, first you have to learn the basics of the problem. And the problem we have to solve is this. We're going to continue to use fossil fuel for a few years or decades, and this is not compatible. This is not compatible with the targets that we have all signed in Paris in terms of emission of CO2. They also said, if you want us to fulfill another target of the United Nations, which is electricity for all in 2030, we will have to change the model. We will have to use off-grid. We will have to use mini-grid. And the legislation is not prepared for this. Our structure is not prepared for this. Currently, off-grid is a question of charity, and not a question of business. And this is something we have to change. They are all gathering, 81% of them are saying we are working on efficiency. This has always amazed me because how come a power sector work on efficiency if this is limiting their sales? So why? And the solution is very simple, because we have been told to do it, because we are a regulated sector. So we tend to forget this. We are mostly regulated sector, and we are disciplined. So if you ask us to work on efficiency, we will work on efficiency, and we will be successfully work on efficiency. But the solution of this lies, and the target is huge. 40% of the emission can be reduced if we work on efficiency. So that's really something we have to work seriously. And the solution lies there, in cities. 70% of us will live in cities. If we are not successful in cities, forget it. We will not have the solution. And for the utilities, this is a very clear target, very simple. We have to build smart cities. Unfortunately, this is what we have today. So this is not so simple, and this will take a lot of effort and a lot of regulation. But, and this is why I am again optimistic, in Paris, for the first time, mayors gathered. And the mayors are absolutely conscious that they are part of the solution. So what they said in Paris is that we want clean cities. And these people are really serious about it for one basic reason. This is where we go when we have a problem. We tend to forget that the generation, electricity, is a local issue. And these people generally are responsible when we have, for example, a big problem with supply of electricity. So I asked also on renewable, what are we going to do about renewable? 60% of them said we have a problem of integration. This is something we don't want to recognize also. Obviously, we are recognizing here in this forum of technicians or experts or people that understand this. When we go outside this forum and you say, hey, we want to go much more in renewable, but we have a problem of integration. And this problem of integration also is a problem of technology. That we want it or not, we have plenty of solutions coming, take the challenge, but we still rely only on one solution for storage of electricity on bulk, which is the pumping storage. Technology is progressing. We are working a lot on this, and I'm sure we'll find a solution, but this is yet not seen as final by the power generation people. We also have a problem of supergrids. We talk about this a lot. I was in Saudi Arabia last week, and we discussed about all this. Supergrid is a solution, but it's still very slow. And you have here, probably in India, also example on how slow it is to try to build this supergrid because of plenty of legislation and regulatory issues. After efficiency, after integration of renewable, we also have to face an issue. I know that this is not politically correct, what I'm going to say, but if we say we're going to continue to use coal, gas, and oil, and we don't want to go over 1.5 degree or 2 degree, so we want to limit the emission, in my simple mind of ex-CEO, I don't see how we're going to do without carbon capture and storage. I'm not a fan of carbon capture and storage. I don't want to put carbon capture and storage everywhere. I'm just saying if we don't have this technology, everybody says the same, we have no solution. From IEA till manufacturers, we need carbon capture and storage solution on the right level with the right price. And interestingly enough, only 3 countries in the INDCs have chosen carbon capture and storage as a solution. So that's at least a contradiction. We have this, obviously, it works, it's efficient, and everything you need, but we also have this that we tend to forget, except, by the way, India or Brazil, that have clearly focused one of the solutions on the use of land and the forest as carbon sink. For this, we have a slight, small problem, which is called price signal. In business, we absolutely know that we react to price signal. And if we don't have a clear and credible, long-term, stable CO2 price, behavior will not change. And when I've asked to them, what are the prices that will make you change? Or what do you think you need? What do you prefer? And they said very clearly, 67% of the CEO that I've asked are saying we prefer market mechanism, 33 taxes. They all know that tax is more efficient, faster, but they have a tendency of, sorry for the people in the room, they have a tendency not to trust too much the government. When the government puts his hand on a pile of money, they have doubt that this money will go in the right direction. So they prefer a market because at least the market, they can manage it. And they are asking also for a global market, not unique, but at least consistent, because they are all conscious of the competition question, and they know that a CO2 price very different from region to region will sometimes somewhat hamper the competition. And when I have asked the price, very surprisingly, they are coming with real price. Again, that's the difference between the dream and the reality. If you want to change a behavior, $5 a ton is $5 a CO2 ton is not existing. It's not serious. And this is what they said when I was talking to them on one-to-one. They say, you are not serious in Europe with your $5 a ton. We will never change our business mix with $5. $100 and we change. And you see that more than 70% of them are saying that below $30, there is no change in behavior. And by the way, a lot of companies have understood this. It's amazing the number of companies that are already using CO2 price, and I'm advising a few of them, And they are already putting a CO2 price called the shadow price in their way of making decisions because they want to get safe out of stranded asset. And they know that if you invest in an asset that is here for 30 or 50 years, in 30 or 50 years, a carbon price will exist. So it's much better to take it now into consideration when you make a decision. And then comes the bad news. When I've asked them, what is your preference, mitigation, adaptation? They said very clearly, 100% of them, not 99, 100 said, adaptation is as important as mitigation. And we are using weather and climate forecasts for our operation now. And the answer is here. 60% of the utilities have been affected by climate events or extreme weather events. 100% of them have been moderately or heavily affected. So this is now part of the business of the utilities. Extreme weather events is part of their business. And by the way, this is starting to trigger interesting technologies that this morning we have heard about new tech. This will never exist. This is a windmill that have been in France by chance or in an island, has been in its conception taking as hypothesis that we don't know the wind speed enough for the future. And as we don't want to build a windmill which resists to 300 kilometers, and we don't know, by the way, how to build it today, or it's very, very expensive, so we decided to build some windmill that you can put on the ground when the wind is too strong and come back when the wind is better. So this is something that we will never had 15 years ago, and that we are starting to have because people, the manufacturer, are putting extreme weather events into their research and development. The other bad news, I'm sorry to nearly finish with this, is this. When I asked them, what are the two issues that prevent you to sleep at night? I was expecting price of oil, price of coal, or price of electricity, or pressure of the legislator, or whatever. And very interestingly, they said two issues: land, access to land, and water. Water? So yes, yes, because we are already seeing a huge change in water regime. And this, if I had only one message for you this morning, look at water, because this is becoming urgent. Climate change is changing the water regime, and we continue to make decisions as if the past was a good indicator for the future. No longer. I used to say I am French, I am Brazilian also, and I am helping a few countries like Bhutan or Chile over the world. And they all have problem of water. Now, in Sao Paulo, we are in turmoil because the reservoirs are below 20%. In the summer, they were below 10%. Means that we have no more electricity, and this is climate change. We have been in denial for 10 years, no problem of climate change, and we are now paying the price. And water, contrarily to power or transport, can destroy a society. We are seeing that already in a mini, if I can say mini, because it's 20 million inhabitants, but in a small scale in Sao Paulo, a lack of water during 15 days, and you can have very, very, very severe consequence on the social fabric. On top of that, we are not looking at all the technology that we are pushing are changing our water energy nexus. If you want to use biomass, fine, but you will need a lot of water for this. And this we are not putting into the equation. We just say, oh, we have to change the tech. No, not that simple. We have to look at the whole holistic view, and water is critical. Land is also critical, because we tend to forget that between all these technologies, if you want to generate 1,000 megawatts with a nuclear plant or with a coal plant or with a gas plant, this is the small square on the bottom of the slide. if you want to do the same power, and I am not even talking about megawatt hour, I am talking about megawatt, you will need infinitely more land. The same way, you will need also land to transfer. I was discussing with the chairman of the state grid company in China, and he said, it's very simple. During years, we have based the development of China putting coal plants where the consumption was. Now, we want to develop China, taking the sun and the wind where it is, and bringing it to the consumption center. And we need a lot of land for this. And fortunately in China they have it, but not always and not in all the countries. So water and land are the two issues. And then when you reach, why are you not doing that faster? They say, oh, we would love to do it. But when we ask our customer, they are saying, you do it, it's important, but for the same price. So we have another contradiction here. I think it's very important that we push for this solution, but we have to look at the reality. And the reality is 97% of the people doesn't want to change the price. And when you ask them, at the end of the interview, you ask them, okay, now what is your number one priority? Environment, price, what is? And the 94% said priority is safety of supply. And I say, why? They say, you know, how many CEO do you know that have been fired because they are emitting too much CO2? Yes. And how many CEO do you know that have been fired because of blackouts? Say, okay, I got your point. That's fine. So this is in reality something we have also to understand. These people are absolutely efficient, they are great, and they are full of energy, but we have to send them the right signal. And this could be my conclusion. If we want to move the sector the way we will have to, because there is no choice, we will have to lower CO2 emission, we want it or not. If we want to be safe ourselves and give a safe world for our children, we will have to do it. But we have to understand the electricity sector is a priority. 40% of direct emission, 60% of indirect emission comes from this sector. And we have to send the right signal to these people. They can do it, but they have to understand first if we are serious, and second, if we have understood the consequence of what we were asking them to do. And they will do it, because they have all the technology they want to do it. And by the way, they are absolutely conscious of it, because 75% of them were directly or indirectly in Paris during the meeting, which for the first time ever, they were there, influencing, and not always in the right direction, but influencing. And 94% of them think that the agreement is absolutely vital for their business. They are all putting this into their strategical thinking. The question we have to ask, and they ask themselves when they cannot sleep at night, is this one. Can we succeed in a world in chaos? We have no choice, absolutely no choice. And just giving you this slight message, we have no time also. We have an urgency here. We are talking, but this is urgent. Just to finish, this is a beautiful spot in Australia, in the reef, Australia Reef. But the problem is that this was 15 years ago. 5 years ago, this is what it looks like. So we have no time. Thank you very much for your attention.